Autumn 1943. The Italian countryside had turned to mud and ash. After Mussolini's fall, chaos swallowed the nation. The Germans, once allies, had become occupiers. Young soldiers like Luca Ferraro found themselves stranded between two enemies, the advancing Allies and their former comrades from Berlin. Luca sat by a cracked fountain in a deserted village, his rifle across his knees, uniform torn and mudded. The once proud insignia of his division meant nothing now. Orders no longer came. Radios had gone silent. Only rumors traveled, whispers that the war was lost, that Italy had surrendered. He hadn't seen his family in months. His mother's letters stopped coming after the bombings reached Naples. Each sunrise brought more uncertainty. Each sunset another reminder that he was alone. From the church tower nearby, smoke drifted upward. Germans had executed local partisans the night before. Luca had looked away. He was a soldier, not a murderer, but silence made him complicit. As he cleaned his rifle, he caught sight of a photograph tucked inside his helmet, a young woman smiling in sunlight, her hand holding his. It was Sophia. He had promised to return. Now that promise felt like a ghost he could never reach. The next morning, Luca wandered the countryside searching for food and direction. Roads were empty except for burned-out vehicles and the occasional cry of crows. Near a crossroads, he stumbled upon another soldier, not Italian, not German, but an American pilot, wounded, his parachute tangled in an olive tree. The man's leg was bleeding heavily, his lips pale. He raised a pistol but dropped it almost immediately. "Don't shoot," he rasped. Luca hesitated. Killing an enemy would mean safety, but also the end of himself. He tore strips from his own uniform to stop the bleeding, his medic training guiding him. The American watched in disbelief. "Why?" he asked weakly. Luca didn't answer, perhaps because mercy was all he had left. When night fell, he built a small fire behind an abandoned farmhouse. The two men sat across from each other, enemies by war, brothers by circumstance. They shared a single can of beans in silence. Outside, German patrols passed on the road. Luca pressed his finger to his lips. The American nodded. For that brief night, the lines of war blurred. Two men, both tired, both wishing they'd never worn a uniform. At dawn, the rumble of engines shattered their fragile peace. German troops approached, a convoy searching for Allied airmen. Luca hid the pilot in a hayloft, covering him with sacks of grain. His heart pounded as boots crunched outside. A German sergeant barked in harsh tones. "Have you seen an American?" Luca shook his head, forcing his voice steady. The sergeant's eyes narrowed. He noticed the medical bandages hanging from Luca's bag. "You're aiding them," he hissed. In that instant, Luca realized his choices were gone. The sergeant drew his pistol, but before he could fire, Luca lunged, striking him across the face with the rifle stock. The gun went off, the echo splitting the still morning air. The Germans shouted. Luca ran. He grabbed his bag and sprinted toward the woods, bullets tearing through the olive grove. Behind him, smoke began to rise, the farmhouse was burning. He didn't look back. Somewhere in that chaos, he hoped the American had escaped. It was the only comfort he had left. As he stumbled into the forest, bleeding from a graze on his shoulder, he whispered a prayer, not for victory, not for forgiveness, but for peace. For days, Luca hid in the Apennine Hills, surviving on snowmelt and stolen apples. The war below raged endlessly, artillery echoing through the valleys, aircraft roaring overhead. From his perch, he watched the land he loved being torn apart. One night, a group of Italian partisans found him. They pointed rifles, suspicious, until he raised his hands and said, "I'm done fighting." Their leader, an old farmer with weathered hands, lowered his gun. "Then help us heal what's left." They welcomed him into their camp, a small cave lit by lanterns, where wounded villagers lay on blankets. Luca tended to them, using what remained of his supplies. Children watched him work in silence. To them, a soldier who healed instead of harmed seemed like a miracle. He stayed with them for weeks. Each day he helped rebuild. Each night he dreamed of Sofia, wondering if she still waited. He never saw the American again, but in quiet moments he thought of him, a reminder that compassion could exist even in war. The partisans came to trust him, calling him Il Medico del Silenzio, the silent doctor. April 1945. The war was ending. Rumors spread that the Allies had liberated Milan. The partisans celebrated quietly, afraid to believe it. That evening, Luca climbed a ridge overlooking the valley. The sunset painted the clouds blood red, as if the sky itself remembered. In his hands, he held Sofia's photograph. The corners were worn, the ink faded, but her smile remained. He closed his eyes and imagined her waiting near the fountain where they first met, the sound of laughter instead of gunfire. A distant explosion rolled through the hills, the last sigh of a dying empire. Luca whispered softly, "It's over." For the first time in years, the air felt light. He left his rifle on the ridge and walked down toward the village. The church bells were ringing, not for death, but for peace. As he passed the ruins, he saw wildflowers blooming through cracks in the road, fragile but alive. When he reached the square, he saw her Sofia, older, thinner, but real. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Under the crimson sky, they embraced two survivors, bound not by victory but by endurance.